Good evening or morning or whatever time of the day it happens to be. Welcome one, welcome all to the Writer's Black podcast. My name is Greg Nikes, someone who wanted to be Dauntless when they were a teenager, but probably ended up being Amity. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this week I'm sitting down with Veronica Roth, the acclaimed author of the Divergent series, to talk about her latest work, the first entry in a brand new dystopian duology, Seek the Traitor's Son. We'll talk about the multiple phases this project took on over its 6-year development cycle, her tips for dealing with negative feedback in a constructive way. Of course, we'll talk about her return to the Divergent universe in the upcoming sixth faction, and so much more. If you're enjoying the Writer's Black podcast, guys, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your podcasting platform of choice. Follow along with us over on social media. We are at Writer's Black Pod on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. You can also find the video version of our podcast over on YouTube. We are at Writer's Black Pod on all those platforms. And if you want to be a part of the show, please send an email to writersblackpod@gmail.com. We would love to talk to you about your projects, whatever you got going on, even if it's just like, what does your dog walking ritual look like? What kind of dog do you have, actually? Can I pet your dog? Can I pet your dog? Email me if I can pet your dog. In case you can't tell, I've had a fistful of Sour Patch Kids, so I'm all over the place right now. So I'm gonna stop talking, and we're just gonna get right to the interview with Veronica Roth. So, Veronica, you are an acclaimed best-selling author whose work was pivotal for an entire generation of readers, myself included. I was a senior when the Divergent stuff was all hitting the big time, and you're about to do it all over again. Before we dive into Seek the Traitor's Son, I am curious. You're a well-documented tea enthusiast, so what tea blend has been getting you through this project?
Well, I am very sensitive to caffeine, so I can only have 1 cup of caffeinated tea per day. And I cling to it like grim death. It's Harney's loose leaf English breakfast. Very simple, but I need it.
Quality is quality.
Yeah.
So you wrote the Divergent books when you were still in college, and now you're releasing a new epic dystopian novel, Seek the Traitor's Son. Looking back at the start of your career, how has your perspective on storytelling and on the dystopian genre itself changed over time?
Well, with Divergent, that was the first book that I sold, of course, and I learned a lot from writing that series. But I think I internalized a lot of negativity about it. It's just mostly the reception was very positive, but there's always negativity when something becomes popular, and I really soaked that in like a sponge, I think because I was so young. And after that, I was very determined to prove myself, and I wrote several books after that point. I was very focused on growth in all the areas that I knew I needed to improve, and all of that was great. I'm really glad that I did it, but I lost was this feeling of creative freedom and joy that I had, before I got published. And with Seek the Traitor's Son, I was determined to get back to it. I think I wanted to pack the book full of things that I loved, and to stop analyzing quite so much, and to carry the skills that I had built into the book, but also to kind of loosen up. So for me, it was just like the most fun writing process ever. It took 6 years, but I really loved writing it.
So 6 years you were working on this book. What was it about this project that stayed with you over all of that time, even through other projects that you were working on? And can you give us a brief elevator pitch for what this new book is about?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with that, actually. I think it helps. But Seek the Traitor's Son is set on a futuristic Earth where a virus called the fever has destroyed Earth's population. Basically, everyone who gets it dies, but half of them come back to life with special gifts, usually relating to the perception of the past. But some rare people can see the future instead. And our main character, Elegy, is summoned before them to hear a prophecy. And the prophecy says that she'll either save her people from their enemies or fail them, and along the way she'll fall in love with a man who will bring her death. So, very dramatic premise. I think what really kept me going was I was really intrigued by these characters. Elegy and Theron are the main characters of the book, and they have both suffered tremendous losses. They've endured great failures, and they are tied together for better or worse, basically. He has sworn a knight oath to protect her that he immediately fails, and I think just the kind of hurt that exists between them, it felt new and different to me. as a dynamic, and I knew they would fall in love. That's part of the plot, you know. And I was like, well, how do I get them there when they have all this baggage between them? So that was what kept me going. Even as I experimented with genre and with gender and with like age range of characters and all this stuff. But what stayed the same was those two people at the core of the book.
You mentioned that there were earlier drafts of the story that you tried writing for different age groups or different genres, different kinds of readers. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? What was all the kind of experimentation like for you?
Yeah, so I love both science fiction and fantasy. So I was like, okay, well, in this one, they'll be in a fantasy kingdom with horses and swords, right? Like that was where it started. And I was like, okay, well, that's not working because I don't know why it didn't work exactly, except that I think I like a blend of genre. So I think I was trying to figure out the balance between them. So I had a version that was in space and it was far more cyberpunk feeling. And that just didn't make sense for the story because it's just not tech focused at all. And so I was just always like adjusting the combination of the two. And it took up until the last draft to really get the balance right and figure out how to mash all of these worlds together. And when I was, honestly, like when I wrote the YA version, which was by far the worst version of this book, because the characters, like, they don't make sense as younger people. It doesn't work. But what I discovered by writing that was the fever, which is such a critical part of the world building that it's hard to imagine the book without it. But it made the book feel more grounded and made me decide to put it on Earth and to make it dystopian. And so I think I just like grabbed little things out of each version that I played with and kept them. And that's what you see in the final draft.
I spoke to someone recently, and the way they described that process is like you write these different stories and then you kind of cannibalize the details and find what works best.
Yes.
Was there a detail that you really wanted to keep in the story, but it just didn't work, and maybe you tried really hard to keep it, but you just couldn't find a way to make it fit?
Yeah, I mean, I really miss. I was playing The Witcher 3 while I was writing this book at one point, and I had a bunch of like almost like potions, like what you make in The Witcher. You're always, yes, for those who don't know about The Witcher 3, you're always like concocting things. You can put oils on your weapons, you can drink them to like produce particular effects. Anyway, I put like potions in the draft, but they just were so confusing. Yep. But I loved them, so I miss them.
You blend political rivalry with an emotional romance in this book between Elegy and her knight Theron. What drew you to such an intimate love story inside a world that feels so harsh and dangerous?
I think this was me realizing that this is what I want to do, right? There's a lot of sci-fi and fantasy out there that is big in scope and scale with a lot of characters, and you can really feel the size of those universes, and I admire them deeply. But that is not my priority in fiction. I think I really love to keep things intimate with characters and explore their relationships and their emotions, even if the backdrop is this really big universe. And some of my favorite stories have struck that balance, and I admire that too. So I think just realizing, that you don't have to be every kind of author. You should be the author that you are. And with Seek the Traitor Son, I feel like I let myself do that for the first time in a long time.
These two seem so deeply shaped by their duty, their loyalty, and the prophecy at the center of the story. When you were developing these characters, was there an aspect of their relationship that was more important to you to get right emotionally?
Yes. So it's hard to talk about without spoiling all the things, right? Yeah. But basically, Theron has gone through something that he can't acknowledge to himself. And I wanted to be very sensitive about the way that I handled that issue. It took a lot of drafts to figure out how she would treat him after learning about the thing that's happened to him, and how he would think about it himself. And it's a little bit of sort of an unreliable narrator thing, because when you're in his head, he sees things a particular way, and you have to accept that this is the character's limited understanding of his own history, which evolves over the course of the book. So that was, sorry to be so vague, but
no, I understand.
That is, the hardest part, I think, about their relationship. I just wanted to make sure that I was sensitive about, the more serious things between them.
Were there any specific inspirations, historical, literary, or personal, that helped shape the atmosphere of this book?
Yes, so primarily the book is set in what is the future of Los Angeles. They don't call it that, but that's where it is. And I think my husband and I, during COVID, when we were in Chicago, so we were looking down the barrel of a cold winter where we were going to have to stay inside alone, right? So instead of doing that, we rented an RV and we drove across country. And we drove through, as one does when they're going to Los Angeles, we drove through a lot of desert. And I think I had never spent that much time in the desert before. And it was so beautiful and so lonely. And I was just, the atmosphere, I fell in love with it. So I think that love leaked into this book in a big way.
You mentioned Chicago a little bit. I know your works, you've had a focus on Chicago in the past. You just have so much love for the way you write about Chicago. Was there a challenge in kind of pivoting that joy to LA?
A little bit, yeah. I don't know the city as well, but I have spent a lot of time there. I did, spend 2 months there during this COVID excursion that I'm talking about, and I think that helped me to appreciate it more. But it helped also that I was writing my 2 novellas, When Among Crows and To Clutch a Razor, which are Polish, it's like Slavic fantasy set in Chicago. I was writing them at the same time that I was writing this. So it was like there was a Chicago outlet, like a pressure valve that I could put all my Chicago love into while I was exploring something new.
Out of all the themes in this novel, which one became the emotional backbone of the story for you? And going into the project, did you know kind of one theme was going to outweigh the other?
I think a lot of my adult work has been about accepting guilt. And I think it's complicated why that's the case. I feel that being an adult is about learning that you've been, in some way unconsciously or consciously complicit in, systems that perpetuate evil. And acknowledging that is the way that we become mature and, learn to grow as people. So I think a lot of my work deals with that in the adult space, and this book is no different. Coming to a deeper understanding of yourself that is unflinching and not afraid, I think is a big theme here. At least I hope so.
6 years in the incubator for this project. You worked on other stuff. Your novellas came out. You've had other projects going on. For you, when you're balancing stuff like that, what does that process look like? How do you decide today I'm going to work on this project or today I'm going to work on this project? Is it a vibes thing? Are you on a strict schedule? How does that look for you?
Well, I don't usually have such a strict schedule, but I did this time because I have another book coming out in October. It is also a 2-book series. So that's 4 books that I knew would come out within 18 months. So basically what I did is I wrote a draft of one, then I would turn that in, and as I was waiting for notes on that, I would write a draft of the other one. And then when I was turning that in, I would get notes back on the first one, and then I would start to work on that. So I basically spliced them together and alternated. And it worked for me. I wouldn't do it again, by the way, but it worked for me because working on one gave me a break from the other one, and then, and vice versa. So it was like giving my brain a rest, even though I was not actually resting. But again, it was very intense. I don't think it's workable for the long term, but it was a really fun experiment to do for a while.
We spoke a little bit earlier about dealing with negativity when it came to feedback, maybe from Divergent, and how you dealt with that when you were younger. Do you have any tips for dealing with that stuff now? And what advice do you have for people that may be going through similar things where they're experiencing that negative feedback for the very first time?
Yeah, I think it's really shocking at first when you start to see negative responses to your work. You have to depersonalize it as much as possible. I think that's the best way to deal with it, is that they are not usually talking about you because they don't know you. So even if they think they're talking about you, they aren't. It's not based on any real experience of you as a person, and you are not your work. So you may love your work, but you're a human being and your work is just, a flawed thing that you made. And so it's okay to separate those two. I think for me, that was huge. But also, I try not to expose myself to all of those opinions. I think, people have this feeling like, oh, well, how will I ever learn if I don't see the critiques? And I think that's admirable, but you already know what you want to fix by the time you turn a book in. You have read it so many times, you're like, well. So I think you can still grow without just beating yourself over the head with some guy on the internet's opinion. And also those negative reactions, they vary. So one person will say the book is slow, one person will say it was rushed. So you have to think about what you like, what you think, and how you want to change and grow as a creative person. I think focusing on that is what will keep you sane.
So since Seek the Traitor's Son is the first book in a duology, how much can you tease about where the story might go in book two?
It's so hard. I don't want to spoil anything, but I would say that book one stays pretty focused on these characters, and it stays intimate, even though the backdrop is kind of big in scope. Book two gets bigger. Like it's more expansive. The characters can go explore a little more, and so and as a result, things become far more complicated.
So I know we're a little short on time, so I'm gonna wrap, I think, with just one more question. I would be remiss if I did not ask about your return to the Divergent universe in the upcoming sixth faction book, which is an alternate universe telling of the story. What keeps you coming back to this universe after more than a decade, and what inspired this, I guess, Elseworlds take on the Divergent universe?
Well, I was very determined never to return to the Divergent universe, so this is a surprise to me as much as anyone else. But I think what happened is that Divergent just wasn't going anywhere. You know, it continues to sell to this day, which is amazing, a wonderful gift for an author and not something I expected. But I realized that because I had so much of the aforementioned negativity about it, I needed to find a way to feel more positively about it because it was not going anywhere in my life. So, and the only way that I really know how to do that is to make something new. And the alternate universe felt like a really good way of making something that truly felt new instead of having to inherit, you know, the flaws of the old work. So I can kind of build it in a new way. And that was exciting to me. So it's a way to love and celebrate and feel pride in Divergent without feeling like I'm talking about the work I did 15 years ago, which, you know, no creative person really wants to stay stuck that far in the past. So it's felt really restorative and wonderful. And I don't know, I hope people love it, but for me, it accomplished its mission. So I'm happy that it's coming out.
Good. So Seek the Traitor's Son is out now. The six factions coming out in October, I believe you said.
Yes.
Where can everyone go to find the books, to find everything that you're doing, and just keep up to date with just everything Veronica Roth?
Well, you can find Seek the Traitor's Son wherever books are sold, your favorite local bookstore, online, anywhere. But I am at veronicarothbooks.com, and I'm on most social media platforms as at Veronica Roth.
Fantastic. Veronica, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Next week on the Writer's Block podcast, co-founder of Smart Girls, Meredith Walker, joins us to talk about her brand new book, Be Yourself and Other Bad Advice, a teen girl's guide to unlearning the rules.
The show that Amy and I started with was called Smart Girls at the Party. We just wanted to invite girls to come on and tell us about their lives. And I kept finding myself drawn more and more and more to that. And I was always drawn, I mean, my whole life I was drawn to just the subject of adolescence. You know how sometimes it could be worms or dinosaurs or, you know, food, whatever it is. And mine was I liked learning more about adolescence. And so it was just the convergence of all those things. And then hearing girls through the years, like you'd think social media was like when something happened, but just hearing girls talk through the years, always the same subjects came up, and that was high pressure. They felt pressure all the time about what they were supposed to be doing and what their life should look like. And every time I would go and speak to it could be a Girl Scout group or a school assembly or whatever it was, and I would talk about the times I didn't know where my career was going, or I felt a little confused, or I had messed up, I had made a big mistake, or, you know, whatever.
Guys, we are winding down the Writer's Block podcast season 2. We only have a couple more episodes left in season 2. It's crazy. We're still working on details of how long the hiatus is going to be, but we are going to be taking a little bit of an extended break here coming soon. So please, if you're a writer that wants to be a part of the show, or you know someone that wants to be part of the show, please send us an email. We are writersblockpod@gmail.com. You can also contact us via our social media channels. We are at writersblockpod on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. I'd love the chance to get to sit down with anyone that wants to talk about their work. I have a few more guests lined up and some more people that I'm trying to reach out to, but we're kind of winding things down for the season. If you're enjoying the Writer's Block podcast, consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcasting platform of choice. Follow us along on those social media channels that I mentioned earlier at Writer's Block Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and YouTube, where you can watch the video version of the podcast. If you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing, you can find me over on YouTube or Blue Sky. I am at Lego My Grego TV. where you can keep up to date with just the various things that I'm working on behind the scenes. I'm taking a break here for a little bit, but I really want to sit down and work on 2 to 3 short films this year, like little comedy sketch things. But I have these scripts on my desk that have been staring me in the face for about 6 months now. So I'd like to do that if that could. But please follow me on social media to keep up to date with everything that's going on with me. Follow Writers Black. And again, like I said before, if you want me to pet your dog, if I can pet your dog, please get a hold of me, because I want to pet your dog, because I am so dizzy. I am so dizzy. Sugar has not been working with me recently. So it's the Sour Patch Kids, and it's the Zero Sugar Strawberries and Cream Dr. Pepper, which still has sweetener. Yeah, I'm flying off the wall. So I'm going to end this, and I'm going to go take a nap. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Thank you, Veronica Roth, for joining us this week. Until next time, I have been Greg. You have been awesome. And please, oh please, keep writing.